It's Week 10 in the Blue Collar Football League, and with just 1 week remaining after this one, the race for playoff spots is heating up. In the Eastern Conference, the Columbus Gladiators are fighting to hold on to the top seed after suffering their first loss of the season to the Indiana Tornadoes 14-12 last week. Meanwhile, in the West, the Cin-City Buccaneers still have a chance at the top seed after playing to a 6-6 tie against the Cincinnati Dukes. As if that wasn't enough, this week's meeting between the Buccaneers and the Gladiators is a rematch of last season's BCFL Championship Game, won by Cin-City 23-16 on a 60-yard touchdown pass in the final minute. In this year's meeting, Cin-City faced a 3rd and 5 on their opening drive when C.J. Talley found Dante Jackson for 9 yards down to the 46. 2 plays later, Teo Cook took a handoff 9 more yards for another first down at the 30-yard line. But 2 plays after that, Talley scrambled. He managed to avoid the sack, but as he looked downfield, his pass was picked off by James Fields, and in shades of last week, the Buccaneers were unable to close out the drive with any points. Later in the quarter, the Gladiators got a stop in midfield, and this time it was Kershaw who rolled out, and he was able to find Mikey Love, who bowled his way forward inside the 10-yard line for a 42-yard gain. On 3rd and goal, however, James Fields took the direct snap, Jaquan Jackson tripped him up in the backfield, and a penalty pushed the Gladiators back even further. That resulted in a 4th and 30. Kershaw scrambled around a bit, threw a desperation pass in the end zone. It was knocked away by Ontario Williams, and this time it was the Bucs defense that had denied the threat. Columbus got the ball back just 3 plays later when Talley's pass was picked off by Jeremy Williams. He returned it 20 yards down to the Bucs' 25-yard line. After a loss on first down, Fields took a short pass. He worked his way ahead 15 yards for a first down inside the red zone. And 2 plays later, Kershaw threw one up. Mikey Love brought it down in the end zone for a 13-yard touchdown. The 2-point attempt was no good, but the Gladiators led 6-0 with 2 minutes left in the first quarter. The Bucs faced a 3rd and 11 on the second play of the second quarter when Talley quickly spotted Kurt Johnson. Johnson hauled it in. He slipped 1 tackle, and he was going to make his way in for a 51-yard touchdown. The Cin-City kick was no good, but with just over a minute gone in the second quarter, it was now 6-6. The Bucs got the ball back, and after 1 first down, Talley connected with Jackson again for 22 yards inside the 30. The drive stalled shortly thereafter, and the Bucs' 34-yard field goal attempt was no good, but an offsides penalty against the Gladiators gave the Bucs a first down. And Cin-City cashed in on the next play when Cook took a handoff and burst straight through the Gladiators' defense for a 12-yard touchdown. This kick was good, and the Buccaneers had a 13-6 lead with 6 minutes left before halftime. Looking to answer, the Gladiators faced a 4th and 1 when Kershaw faked the handoff and found his tight end Lee Saunders open over the middle. He was going to just make it in for a 46-yard touchdown. This time the 2-point conversion was good, and Columbus led 14-13. On Cin-City's next possession, Cook took a handoff. He worked his way around the left side for 15 yards to the 50. Then, facing a 3rd and 4, John Boyd bruised his way, pushing forward, and picked up 6 yards and the first down. But a holding penalty moved the Bucs back, and when they had the punt, Cullen Bradley was able to avoid the block, but his short punt was fielded by Demetrius McLaughlin. He had plenty of room and lots of blockers ahead of him. Just took 1 move and 1 block, and he was in for a 53-yard touchdown that had the Gladiators ahead 20-13 at halftime. On the opening drive of the third quarter, the Gladiators were forced to punt. Ontario Williams fielded the punt. He had a lot of room himself, worked his way into Columbus territory inside the 40 when Calvin Tyler poked the ball away, and Victor Lash was there to recover, and Columbus maintained possession. The Gladiators were then faced with a 3rd and 6. Kershaw bumped once, went deep, and Josh McCarroll hauled it in for a 51-yard gain down to the 2-yard line. And on the next play, Travis Birdsong pushed his way into the end zone for a touchdown. Columbus had scored 3 straight touchdowns to take a 26-13 lead with 10 minutes remaining in the third quarter. Given a second chance, Ontario Williams quickly made up for his fumble. He fielded the kick and found his way through the Columbus defense, slipping a couple of tackles and picking up 51 yards, setting the Buccaneers up at the 30-yard line. Cin-City faced a 3rd and 5 when Talley kept the play alive, slipping not 1 but 2 sacks before finding Marcus Commodore for a 9-yard gain and a first down. And then Talley finished things off himself with a 3-yard touchdown run. The extra point was good, and the Bucs had pulled to within 6, 26-20. Columbus again turned to the deep ball. Kershaw fired one long. The pass fell incomplete, but the flags flew for pass interference, giving the Gladiators the ball at the 5-yard line. After losing 1 yard on first down, James Benvenuti took a pitch. Joshua Dobbins knocked the ball loose, and Ontario Williams was there to recover. He picked it up and even got up for a few more yards, taking the ball out to the 32-yard line. Columbus got the ball back 2 plays later when Talley's long pass was intercepted by Jeremy Williams, his second interception of the game, but the Gladiators had lost nearly 70 yards of field position in the exchange. In the fourth quarter, Kershaw connected with Love for 14 yards down to the 35, but Columbus only lost yards from there and ended up having to punt. The Buccaneers picked up 1 first down, then Dante Jackson took the handoff, looked left, saw a hole up the middle, and burst through the Columbus defense, making it all the way 66 yards for a touchdown that evened the score at 26-26. Bradley then came on to kick his 3rd straight extra point, putting the Buccaneers ahead 27-26 with 9 minutes 4 seconds remaining. Both teams punted, and the Gladiators got the ball back at their own 40 with 4:47 remaining when Kershaw rolled out and found James Benvenuti for 10 yards out to the 50. Columbus then faced a 4th and 13, but Kershaw again connected with Benvenuti, this time 21 yards down to the 32. Then a 5-yard pass to Fields got Columbus to the 27 with a 2nd and 5 at the 2-minute warning. On second down, Kershaw decided to go for the end zone, but his pass for Josh McCarroll was off the mark, bringing up 3rd and 5. That's when the snap went over Kershaw's head. He was able to recover it and somehow get the ball to James Benvenuti for 2 yards, setting up a 4th and 3. Kershaw quickly looked to Fields, but he couldn't quite bring it in, and the Gladiators turned it over on downs. All that was left was for the Buccaneers to kneel out the final minute 39 and claim their 27-26 win. The Buccaneers scored the final 2 touchdowns and made 3 of 4 extra points to pull out the 1-point win. Dante Jackson led Cin-City with 83 rushing yards on 3 carries, including the game-winning touchdown, and was also the leading receiver with 5 catches for 54 yards. C.J. Talley completed 10 of 21 passes for 157 yards and ran for 26 yards. Teo Cook ran 15 times for 68 yards. Daniel Ferguson led the Bucs on defense with 10 tackles. Joshua Dobbins had 8 tackles, 5 for loss, with a forced fumble and a sack. Jackson had 2 tackles on defense, while Ontario Williams had 2 tackles, a fumble recovery, and 149 return yards. For the Gladiators, Ben Kershaw was 15 of 33 passing for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. James Fields caught 5 passes for 44 yards, had 40 yards in returns, and on defense had 2 tackles and an interception. Jeremy Williams had 4 tackles and 2 interceptions on defense. Dominic Farrell and Rel Nix both led the Gladiators with 8 tackles. Key stat in the game was rushing yards, where the Bucs ran 36 times for 184 yards, while the Gladiators ran 24 times for no yards. Over in Indianapolis, the Indiana Cutters visited the Indiana Tornadoes in a key matchup in the Western Conference's Red Division. On the game's second play from scrimmage, Isaiah Moore took a short pass from Kenny Martin, made a move, and burst his way forward 31 yards down to the Tornadoes' 22-yard line. Later in the drive, Martin had to scramble around a bit before finding Moore, this time for 16 yards down to the 6. And on 3rd and goal, Marquise Holt took a handoff, pushed his way ahead 2 yards for a touchdown, putting the Cutters up 7-0. Late in the quarter, Corey Bridges followed his blockers around the right side, first for 12 yards, and then right up the middle for 15 yards, down to the Cutters' 15. Dominic Rogers finished things off. He rolled out to the right and found Rodney Sutton for a 6-yard touchdown. The 2-point conversion was no good, and the Cutters led 7-6 after 1 quarter. In the second quarter, the Cutters faced a 3rd and 1 when Twan Williamson found plenty of room on the left side. He burst forward for 37 yards down to the Tornadoes' 35. Marquise Holt then followed that same pass for 10 yards down to the 15-yard line. But the Cutters could go no further. Still, the drive led to this 33-yard field goal by Dre Atkins, putting the Cutters ahead 10-6. The Tornadoes had time for one more drive just before halftime, but their pass was stopped just short of the goal line, and the Cutters held on to their 10-6 lead at halftime. On the opening drive of the second half, Rogers again turned to the air. His deep pass was caught, and the Tornadoes made it all the way down to the 8-yard line on the 54-yard pass. Then, on 3rd and goal, Rogers turned to Cliff Wheeler. He caught the 6-yard touchdown, and the Tornadoes led 12-10. Later, the Tornadoes were backed up inside their own 10 when Dennis Mitchell unleashed this 63-yard punt that pushed the Cutters back inside their own 30. Cutters did get one first down, but then Martin's pass was picked off by Marcus Richardson. He made it easily the 37 yards for the touchdown that had the Tornadoes up 18-10 after 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, Rogers again went to the air, this time with a 33-yard pass down to the Cutters' 31. But on 4th and goal, Rogers was stopped for no gain, and it was still a 1-score game. The Tornadoes got the ball back, and on 4th and 8, Rogers found Wheeler again, this time for a 20-yard touchdown. The 2-point conversion was good, and the Tornadoes now led 26-10. The Cutters managed one more touchdown when Martin connected with Moore for a 5-yard score late in the game, but the 2-point conversion was no good. The onside kick that followed failed, and the Tornadoes won the game 26-16. Reviewing all of this week's scores, once again the Buccaneers pulled out the 27-26 win on the road against the Gladiators. Meanwhile, the Tornadoes even their series with the Cutters this year with a 26-16 win. The Spartans locked up the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference with a 22-8 win against the Warriors. Meanwhile, the Blaze shut out the Colonels 24-0. The Mustangs picked up a win against the Huskies, and the Dukes were off this week. Before we go to the standings, a look at this week's upcoming schedule. The Blaze are at the Tornadoes in a game that has implications on playoff seeding in the Western Conference. The Cardinals are at the Dukes, and the Cutters are at the Buccaneers in 2 games that will be played simultaneously at the 2 fields at Walnut Hills, and have lots of playoff implications. The Spartans have a rematch against the Warriors, the Mustangs are at the Gladiators, and the Huskies are off this week. And with just the 1 week remaining, the standings look like this. In the Eastern Conference, the Dukes have a half-game lead on the Gladiators, meaning the Gladiators will have to win and the Dukes lose for Columbus to overtake the number 1 seed. The Spartans are locked in as the number 3 seed as the second place team in the Blue Division, and the Warriors as number 4. In the Western Conference, the winner of the Blue Division will be the number 1 seed. The Blaze can claim that with a win this week. Otherwise, they may have to make up the May 14th game against the Buccaneers that was stopped due to weather. In the Red Division, due to the Cardinals picking up a forfeit win against the Tornadoes, everyone is now 4-5. If all 3 teams remain tied after this week, the Cutters will win the division, and the Tornadoes will make the playoffs as the number 4 seed. If there's a 2-way tie, the order of the tie depending on the teams involved, the Tornadoes would all come up ahead of both the Cutters and the Cardinals. The Cutters would come out ahead of the Cardinals, meaning the Tornadoes and Cutters just have to win this week to make the playoffs. The Cardinals have to win and have one of the other 2 teams lose for them to make the playoffs. And finally, a look at this week's owners poll, where the Blaze remain atop at number 1. The Gladiators fall for the second straight week, however, dropping from 2 to 4. That allows the Dukes to slide up to number 2, and the Buccaneers to move up to number 3. The Tornadoes stay at 5, but the Spartans and Cutters exchange spots, with the Spartans now at 6 and the Cutters at 7. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, Warriors, and Mustangs and Huskies all remain 8 through 11.